My name's Simon Love. I'm the Head of Sustainability Assurance at Assure Quality and manage the team that is doing the appointment, certifier and auditor appointment process here. So we have Trish, who you've heard from, we have Tammy here, and we have Greg there. So all of us here to answer your questions today. It is an interactive session, so we're going to get to an activity for you all to do to help understand some of the challenges in this work. I only have to do one slide today, so I'm just going to give you this quick intro. We've heard a lot of questions and feedback today about the freshwater farm plan system. Assure Quality has been appointed by MFE as the appointment process manager for this. What that means is our job is to help ease the burden on the regional councils before they need to appoint certifiers and auditors in their region. So we help to ensure that national consistency in terms of the skills and experience, make sure they meet a certain bar, so that the people showing up on regional councils' doorsteps meet a sort of minimum level. And so hopefully that will significantly ease the burden. One thing I just wanted to really stress is that obviously it's early in the freshwater farm plan rollout. What you're going to be seeing today is the real process, and it is still in the early stages, which means you have an opportunity today to provide input to that. We really, really want you to think about it and engage and give us that feedback so that we can make the process better, particularly for those, those of you that where it's already happening, or the councils that are soon to roll out. We can still make those changes to make the process better for everyone. So please, I hope you have a good session today, and just again really want to hear from us, so come and grab us if you have questions or feedback.
Great, thanks Simon. So team, it's really lovely to see you here today. Freshwater farm plans are here. It's an exciting process to be part of. It's about enabling the farm operators out there to develop a plan that's going to have great outcomes for our environment. But Clark Kent's applied, and I'm going to need your help to decide whether we're going to let Clark Kent into the program to become a certifier for our regions. Now, farm plan certifiers, for those people who might be still a little bit unsure, they are engaged by the farm operators to certify freshwater farm plans and actions and make sure that they are appropriate. So Clark's going to need to have some knowledge. The team that you are sitting with now is the team that will decide if his application is sufficient in order to enter the program or progress through to national training. There's 3 types of competencies. These are listed in the regulations. These aren't ones that we have made up. 3 types of regulations that we're going to be assessing for his application. Some of the competencies that we're looking at are around farm systems and his knowledge about farm systems. Some of them are around the regulatory and policy, national, regional policy legislation, and some of them are around cultural. We're going to be giving you some criteria to assess his application against, and you're going to have just 10 minutes to determine if the competencies that he has written down have been demonstrated that he has got a good understanding of them. Now, it's not an easy task in 10 minutes, it's not an easy task in a small room, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to have a really good discussion about the types of things that he's written down in his application. Also note that much of what is in the application are real people's words or sentences that they may have used on their application as well. They won't be identifiable. They are obviously anonymised, but they aren't just ones that we've made up as like the perfect gold standard. These are ones that we have copy and pasted off some other people's applications so that you can start to see the types of things that are written for someone who's applying to be a certifier or an auditor. But we need to give you a little bit more knowledge first. So I'm going to hand over to Greg, our technical manager, around what they need to understand. Greg, you're going to need to come towards the front because the microphone.
First question, who's seen the regs? Hands up everyone who's actually seen and looked at the regulations. Okay, so that's the first take-home request, I guess, that you'll need to have. These are the competencies that are in the regulations. These are the areas of knowledge that certifiers, and some of them are applied to auditors as well, need to have an understanding of to be able to do their role. We've clustered them or clumped them into these buckets, if you like, or these groups, just for the purposes of making it maybe a little bit easier. But these are the areas of knowledge that people need to have. Certifiers and auditors also need to be able to demonstrate professional conduct. And in the regulations, again, this is all straight out of the regulations, these are the areas of behavioural competence, if you like, that people need to have. And so what we're looking for in the application information that you've got in front of you are signals, or are there any clues that give us assistance in being able to make a determination around this as well.
So those are quite big, important things, right, Greg?
Yeah, really important. So in the regulations, there's a description around the certification process, for example, where certifiers need to make a declaration of conflict of interest, and they need to be able to manage that properly. Professional competence, confidentiality, they're all really key things when you're engaging with farm operators as a rural professional.
Great.
Okay, so what do we want to see in the application? So the way that the regulations describe the entry criteria for being appointed as a certifier, there's 3 key elements to it. The first element is that you need to be able to demonstrate an understanding of the competencies, which is what we had before. Once you've been able to do that, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got the appropriate level of experience, and that's proven either by a qualification or by 3 years of experience operating in a field relating to the competencies. And we've been able to determine what they are and made some clues for people to help identify what does a field relating to the competencies look like. So those are the fields that are listed there. That's not exhaustive, but it should serve to give people a bit of an idea of, okay, I've been doing some work in the last few years in biosecurity. That may give me the ability to satisfy that criteria. How do I present that information?
Excuse me, mate, like, do you only need to know about greenhouse gas emissions and then you can be a nutrient expert on farm?
No, clearly not.
So how many of those do you have to...
So this is around your ability to be a certifier. So bear in mind, there's a key difference from being a subject matter technical expert and being a certifier. A certifier's role is to gather the information together to make sure that it's sufficient and to make a certification decision on that information being there. This is really just as a bit of a guide to say, what does 3 years experience in a field relating to the competencies actually mean? These are types of activities and fields of experience that people should have to be able to satisfy that criteria.
And when we talk about fields of competencies, we're talking all 12 competencies. So you might just write down for one competency that you've got 3 years of experience with greenhouse gases, but you've still got the 11 other competencies that you're going to have to discuss and explain your understanding of. Hopefully that helps.
This is me too?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we've done is set up a criteria where we're trying to make a determination around the information that Clark has put into his application to work out what level of understanding he has. One of the things we want to be able to make a determination on, and we're going to ask you some questions about this later on, is what is the right level of basic knowledge that we expect these people to have? Do we want highly qualified subject matter experts? Do we need to have people who have got a basic understanding? What's the level that we need to have? This is the criteria gradient, if you like, or scoring system that we've set up. And what we're looking for here is to be able to get people to categorise their level of knowledge in one of these areas.
Great. And you agree?
Yeah. One of the things that we've been looking for within this program is it's actually okay to fail people out. We're not really looking for a program where we're just rubber stamping anyone who wants to apply can get through. There is going to be a threshold, a minimum level of expectation around what people will bring. And so we have to have the ability to be able to say that people can demonstrate an adequate understanding of the competencies and do have the appropriate level of experience and qualification to be able to get through and pass into the program.
Great. So, Tane, we're going to hit it. We're going to hit the activity. Clark's waiting with bated breath for you to see see what you do with his application. So you're going to have a piece of paper. So you have got a piece of paper on your table. This is an application form from Clark. Clark's highlighted what his fields of expertise are. On the next page, Clark has undertaken to self-assess himself on each of these different competencies. These particular competencies are the regulatory ones. Some of you will have cultural and some of you will have farm systems. So what I suggest you do is somebody's going to probably read this out. It's probably a little bit easier to have someone who's going to read out the application. And then at the back of your document, you've got his score sheet. So he's put good for his first competency. Does your table agree with that? Why or why not? After you've scored him against that system that we talked about before, which is also on your table, you're going to decide whether or not he's going to pass or fail the threshold to become a certifier. So on your resource table, you have got the slide deck. The slide deck has all the information we just talked about, particularly around how to score them. Poor, fair, good, great, excellent. You've got 10 minutes at your tables to discuss his application on the competencies that he's identified and decide whether he's explained, yes, he's got good knowledge, he's had 3 years of experience or a qualification, he's got integrity, professional competence, he's got, he's going to be a good person to go out onto our farms with. Are there any questions?
Just one comment about qualifications. So we're kind of looking for equivalents around the 3-year mark. So we're looking for people that have got a study program that equates to basically a 3-year study program. So that matches up with the experience.
Just a question, when you've got so many that are good or great or that sort of thing, is there a weighting to the different criteria, or do you just go on, they all need to have
The reliance, so what's written in the regs is that they have to have an understanding of all of those competencies, not some of them, or almost all of them. So they do have a basic threshold of needing to be able to demonstrate competence in all of the competencies. So one group's got regulatory, one group's got farm systems, one group's got cultural. Here's hoping that Clark's put enough down right, that by the time all the 3 tables have assessed those, that we're going to be able to say, yes, he could enter the program to progress to national training.
Further clarification, when you say all of the competencies, are you talking the 3 or the 12?
So the ones on your application are the ones that you're assessing.
Yeah.
But to be clear, all of them.
All 12 have to be
So
demonstrated
in
in
the
total.
regulations, it doesn't say you've got to have more of an understanding of this competency than that one. All competencies, you've got to have a basic level of understanding, a good level, be able to demonstrate an understanding of all of the competencies.
Yep.
But you guys have got a subset of those.
Can I have one last comment as well, just to build on what you said, Trish? So you are not right now deciding whether or not Clark Kent becomes a freshwater farm plan certifier. When Trish says progress to the next step, this is to get into the program, to be trained and to be fully assessed. So this is only step 1.
All right, Dave, 10 minutes.
We're going to take your 126.
If I can have the people who are identified, who were either volunteered or voluntold that they are presenting back. If you haven't got that yet, just point to them. Yeah, great. And all you need to say is, we were reviewing regulatory competencies. Yes or no, he was able to demonstrate all of the competencies. Yes, he was able to demonstrate 4 of them. We're a bit unsure about 2 of them. Yes, we would accept his application, presuming that the other ones were all okay as well, or no, we wouldn't accept his application because of what he has done has not demonstrated the understanding to progress to national training. So it's not a huge feedback session, but we will have time for questions after that. Right, let's start with table 1. What were you reviewing?
So we were looking at the regulatory experience.
Do you want to just come up and just turn around? Just, I know it's really hard to look back to here. Sorry. Thanks, Up.
Yes, so good. So yeah, we were doing the regulatory experience. Clark graded himself as good, fair and fair. We agreed with his first good grading on impacts of contaminants. We disagreed with his fair grading in relation to the understanding of impacts of farming activities on freshwater. We thought that was poor. And we were kind of like loosely accepted his fair assessment in terms of how you can manage impacts of farming on freshwater. At this stage, we probably wouldn't accept his application.
Perfect. You're the role model of people presenting back. Excellent.
Lovely.
If the second group can do the same thing, but maybe stand on that side, whoever's number 2.
We were also looking at the other for the remaining regulatory
We'll do it, yeah, same ones, but yep.
competency. Oh,
Yep.
they were the same.
Yep.
Okay. And he graded himself good on his experience in resource management, regional compliance, with his experience as an FFP auditor for ECAN. And we were pretty comfortable with his assessment, agreed that he was good. His understanding of regional regulations and his experience using regional plans and applying that to be able to describe scenarios. He described himself as good, and we had some uncertainty of whether we maybe thought he was down to a fair, just because we didn't get much of a sense of him being able to describe those applied scenarios. And around iwi authority documents, his use and experience with iwi management plans, he graded himself as fair, and we actually thought maybe a good with what he was able to demonstrate from his experience. So we're pretty on par with his own self-assessment and would have accepted him. Is that a fair summary?
Great, good work.
Is it time for comments now?
No.
Hold that. Talk.
Team, I want to keep the momentum going.
That's why I asked.
Great question.
Good afternoon all. Yeah, we were essentially the same as your table. So we agreed for his part A, and then we thought we downgraded him for his Te Ao Māori experience to a fair, and then we agreed with his third one, which was his farm systems, which was agreed to as fair. We upgraded him for D. So his national policy and freshwater management and his interactions and experience there, we upgraded him to excellent, and we agreed with his final around the which was E for good. So it was I lied. We downgraded him to fair, and that was his secondary legislation under the RMA Act. But we also agreed to progress him into the program.
Great, excellent, thanks so much. Next team.
Oh, yep, I think it's yeah, so the experience area, he hasn't clicked or hasn't identified the Māori experience, the Te Ao Māori. So he went on to his competencies, and we pretty much agreed with a couple of them, but the first one around Treaty of Waitangi was pretty rudimentary stuff. He implemented a little bit in school, and he did follow up sort of one-day course, but not specifically on that. So we kind of were somewhere between fair and good. He rated himself good. The second one was around Te Ao Māori, and again, we didn't think he really had the level that was classified as good as he had, so we downgraded him to fair. For Te Mana o Te Wai, he had pretty good understanding. May have been relatively basic, but he seemed to grasp the concept, so we kept him as good. And then the last one he had was around sites and species of cultural significance, and he'd actually done some work out in the field and done some work with iwi identifying those, so we actually considered upgrading him in that one to great, or good/great. So I think overall we're probably going to, maybe have just swept through.
Excellent.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's perfect. You guys are doing such a great job. Must have been my awesome instructions. All right, go Pim.
Alright, so we had farm systems and Clark's contaminants and their impacts on freshwater ecosystems. He self-assessed as good. We thought it was a simple but accurate, reasonable description, so we agreed with the good. The second one was the impacts of farming on freshwater and freshwater ecosystems. It looked like a really bad cut and paste from the ChatGPT answer. So he self-assessed as fair, and we graded him to 4. It's like 3.5 lines of not really making sense. And then the last one was the actions to manage the impacts of farming on freshwater and freshwater ecosystems. He assessed as fair, and we agreed with that. And so we had a couple of votes for and a couple of votes against, so not quite sure about whether to get them through. That second one was quite convincing about our system.
Great work. So the table at the back.
So for the pathways, so he didn't really have any work experience listed under Te Ao Māori. So then we went on to the competencies. He he rated himself good across the 4 cultural competencies. But when we looked at his explanation, we felt that for 3 of the 4, he was really only a fair rating. So for drinking water, we felt that his knowledge was still developing and he really has robust knowledge about the treaty. For Te Ao Māori, his description was sort of reliant on others for knowledge and might not be competent to actually be able to explain to others. For Te Manawatu Wai, again, he demonstrated he had a sort of basic understanding, but we didn't really feel it was quite enough to sort of achieve a good rating. But we did agree on his good rating for the sites and species of cultural significance. That he had some experience there, a bit of technical knowledge, so we agree with that good rating. But overall, with the lack of relevant experience and only achieving sort of 3 out of 4 is clear that we couldn't progress them through the
Program. International training, good work. Thanks, Sophie. And the last table.
Kia ora. Ours was on the regulatory framework, and I feel that we were very lenient after listening to everyone else. So we thought he underrated himself across the board. And in the last question, he didn't put a question in there asking for explanation of the questions, but we kind of referenced back to some of his other questions, and across the board, we actually rated him great. So he got in. So interesting.
Great, and I love the way that someone picked up about a ChatGPT answer, because you can imagine Greg and Gemma sitting at the end of all of the applications, and we've had over 80 so far. They can definitely pick up the ChatGPT answer that many people have probably used or put the information into ChatGPT, which is now regurgitated it back out for the next sort of 10 people. So do note not to use ChatGPT.
Or at least edit the response.
Or at least edit it. Put it in your own words. So team, we're going to do this bit and then we'll come back to questions, because this might answer any questions.
Cool. So, yeah, before we get into questions, I just want to go over the whole process, because as Trish alluded to, this is just the start. This is just to get in the door. You've got a whole lot of other hoops to jump through. So we said this is the application process. If you get through that, you get through to national training, which is online modules and an assessment. And from there, you go on to your regional training, which is managed by each particular region. And then from there, come back to us and you do your on-farm practical assessment. And that's where it's pretty close to what the Environment Canterbury process is, but with a few tweaks. And that's where we can see if they can practically apply what they've told us in the application, and also what they've learned through the process. That's where our job starts. What we do as AQ, we bundle up all the information of how they got through the system and their performance, and then we pass it on to the councils, who have to make the decision whether to appoint or not appoint this person, and that's completely up to them. So yeah, and then they might end up on our national register at the end of it. So that's questions.
Yeah,
go. Comment first, and then sort of question. We had some robust discussion. I won't call it an argument. Around one of them, because it was sort of like, this is talking about can describe and explain a simple scenario, or can describe, explain, and practically apply. We're assuming, based on his experience, which he's outlined in detail, or she has outlined in detail, that from that experience we would expect them to be able to do that. Someone said, oh, I had spent 10 years doing FEPs. Cool, you may have spent 10 years doing really, really terrible FEPs and missing big chunks and causing big issues for farmers. We don't know that, so potentially some more detailed guidance, or some like exemplar type answers, possibly even if it was like a completely separate, unrelated to any of this freshwater stuff, exemplar answer on displaying your knowledge of lions. This is how I got my experience, and here's some specific examples of knowledge and situations that I've dealt with, might give the person who's reading through this a better opportunity to look at this stuff and go, well, can this person describe, explain, and give me a practical example of that? Because if you don't have this grading sheet, you can't tweak your answers to tick all of those boxes.
Yep.
And I wouldn't want someone that's very, very competent to be missed out because they've written a poor application because they weren't quite sure what you were looking for.
Great question. Any comments on that? Any thoughts or?
I can see why you want broadness, but is it practical to cut something short based on the honesty about it, as opposed to the ability to do it?
Yeah, so I think too the good part about it is that people can attach their CV. They can attach a reference from somebody else as well. So if they have reread their application and be like, oh, I'm just really not telling my own story well enough, they can add additional sort of information to it as well, which I think is probably getting to your point, how much is too much and how much is what we need. Because you put yourself in the shoes of Gemma and Greg, they literally get an application with all 12 competencies, so you guys have had, you know, a set of, not all 12, and they've got to read through that information and look at the history of the person and what their work history's been, and go, yes, they can progress. Oh, they're missing some information, I might go back to them and ask for a little bit more, or no, this person can't. So yeah, you're dead right around how do you write a good answer.
So we do have exemplar answers, and we are developing a library of these answers as well, so that we can kind of look at what's the trend of information that people provide. But we do apply a whole of application lens, so we don't just look at just that answer and that score that they're giving themselves, because they might say, I've got no knowledge and experience in this, and you look at their qualifications or their experience or a reference from a referee, and it's like, yes, you have, you just haven't answered it. So we do look at that whole of application picture.
Yeah, we've got one question, just one last question at the back.
That sort of answers what I was getting at, because it was, you know, came back to our scenario of a person underselling themselves.
Yeah.
But also, is there an opportunity to actually attach some previous FPs that they've done, or that sort of thing, so as an example, because that could also negate that level of standard, you know, what are they used to working to?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we do encourage people when they apply to attach supporting information, but it's probably something that we could look at in terms of emphasising.
What does it look like?
Examples of your work, or examples of plans that you've been involved in, or whatever, to cut to the chase with that.
And I think it's particularly relevant for where you've got certifiers or auditors that want to work in that deer space or the horde space, where they're very much specialised, they're quite
correct.
different.
Yeah.
And it's their knowledge of the mitigations, but also accepted practices and things.
Yeah.
100%.
Relative ones.
Yeah, and guys, I know you're going to have so many more questions, but this 40-minute time frame is just this thing that's looming over us. One of the things that we've been developing at Assure Quality is what is the bottom of people's acceptable level of entry. And one of the things we wanted to just garner from you today, hands up if you agree, hands down if you don't, is a fair level for all competencies, fair. So if an applicant fills in their application form and no competency is put below fair, everything is fair or fair and above, would you let them in the program? Yes? They're still going to do national training, regional training, practical assessment, review for appointment. To get into the program is fair.
I was going to say that too. How desperate are you for certifiers? Like, that's what it comes down to. It's like, we're having this conversation, there's like hardly any, we can't even fill regional council positions, and then they're all about to get nabbed so they can go be certifiers or farm plan creators.
And places like Canterbury might be quite well positioned having an FVP.
Yeah, so then it's kind of like, you know, you'll get some good ones, but then once you've exhausted the minimal supply of environmental science graduates, then you're gonna have to accept poor.
Okay, so is poor okay for you though? If you're a farm operator, do you want someone walking onto your farm with a poor, or do you think fair is fair?
But also poor can learn and be excellent.
Correct, but do they need to learn on the job at the cost of the farmer, or do they need to go away and do that learning before they come to the program?
So this is about what people bring into the start of the process.
Yeah.
So this is about what they inherently carry with them as they begin the journey that Tammy talked to before around the training process. So this is the knowledge that they already hold.
So if the thing there says this person who's about to, you know, like rule over farmers' lives can describe as developing knowledge and minimum sufficient knowledge, like I wouldn't want them on my farm.
Just bear in mind though, this is not about them being able to then make those determinations, because they still have
This
to
is
go
to get
through
into the program.
Real life experience with how to mitigate resource management. It doesn't come with all
Yeah, hang on, team.
They've still got to go through a bunch of training processes, right? So this is about what I bring to the table, knowing that I've then got to complete the 9 national training modules. I've then got to complete the regional training program, which the council determines, which may include modules, it may include practical on-farm application of knowledge and learning as well. So there's going to be further stages of knowledge development and experience and practical capability development as part of the program.
Yep, Sophie?
So what's the purpose of the small value on the left? So say if you've got
We weight them.
where you're good and great, and you've got the odd fair and maybe 1 poor.
We'll look at, if it's 34, is it 42? What's the total score overall to give us a good picture?
Is there does that give you a weighting on?
Yeah. Well, not a weighting as in, something's more important than something else. It just gives us the total added up value. Yeah.
Right, because that was going to be people, right? We've got to have the ability at the end of the day to say this person meets the threshold or doesn't meet the threshold, and the best way to do that is to kind of put numbers against it so that we can actually say this is the number that you need. And the question we're asking you is 2 the minimum that you would expect people to have, or should it be 4 or 5?
So you'll be looking at an average of 2.
Right, guys, we've got some hands up. We're going to deal with these hands just because I've been waiting so patiently.
2 things. One, so your question was, is fair? My answer is it depends. The 2 things it depends on. If we've got someone that's fair across the board, for me that's different to if someone's got a single fair and everything else is excellent. Those are very different. So, like you said,
Minimum of fair.
determining what that number is. So
Yes.
if there was a higher number and one of them was fair, I'd go, yep, cool, they can probably learn. They'll be able to pick that up.
Yeah.
It also probably depends on the comprehensiveness of the training. Online training can be this or it can be this, and we haven't seen that yet.
So one of the things that we're dealing with on that is that we're saying fair is the bottom of all, but an average of good is what's required. So if I then said to you, if it was fair as a minimum, but an average of good, do people's opinions change to, yep, that sounds better?
Yeah.
Cool. I know we've got more questions. I'm going to do the last bit first. They haven't given us our 5-minute warning, but I know that it is. We do have a website. There's no scrolling banners, that you have to try and pay attention to, but there is the opportunity to sign up to subscribe to our newsletter. It's coming out today, actually, team. It's on the first of every month. And the thing about the newsletter is that it's got all the sort of upgraded information, new information, things that have changed. So now that we've gone to a minimum of fair or an average of good, all of that stuff gets communicated out through that newsletter. Please, if you've got more questions, do stay behind and chat with one of us. Otherwise, the door's been opened for us, which I think gives us the clue that it's the time.